Hello students, welcome to Oral Interpretation. My name is Dr. Sandra Romo and this is COM 333. This is our week 1 video lecture. You'll be receiving these video lectures every week and they are required to view as per the syllabus requirements and time constraint requirements required by WASC. Just briefly wanted to introduce myself. I'm going to move my video, try to move it into the middle of the screen where it's not blocking any of the photos. I have some family photos posted here. For those of you that do not know me, I am the program director for the Master's and Bachelor of Arts degrees in Communication Studies here at CBU Online. So I work full-time within the Ops division. Additionally, I have taught at CBU for the last 8 years. This is my 8th year teaching here. I have taught in the full-time capacities here at Ops for the last couple years and have also worked in the traditional daytime undergraduate program and the face-to-face teaching program for 7 years before coming over here. So in that role, I have taught communication studies, public relations, journalism, media studies courses many times. This course we'll get into in a little bit, is traditionally rooted in communication studies, even though I know a lot of you are liberal studies majors. You can see here brief pictures of my family just to introduce them to you so you can get to know me a little better. I'll be married to my husband, Mark. You can see in the picture here for 11 years in this coming February. We have 2 children. My son, Nicholas, is 9 and my daughter, Emma, is 7. You can see that we do love the Green Bay Packers. My son had a Packers birthday party for his last birthday, and you can see a picture of my daughter. She's really avid about Girl Scouts, and I'm her Girl Scout leader, so that's the troop I lead. And it's one of the most enjoyable things that I do outside of being a mom and a professor and things of that nature. I love giving back to the community in that way. So there's just some pictures there of us, just to get to know me a little better, to put some faces to the names and myself as we move through this semester when we're trying to virtually connect. Sometimes that can be a little difficult. As we continue on with our video lecture, you can see here's my contact information. I will tell you the best way to get in touch with me is via email that is synced to all of my devices. It's something that I regularly answer, and it's something that I am very avid about making sure that I'm connected to. The university requires us to respond to all emails within 24 business hours. I usually do that within 6 and usually same day. I'm like I said, I'm fairly connected to my email through my phone and other mobile devices. I know that that's the primary form of communication we have with each other, and usually you just have a quick question to ask about assignment, so I hate while you're working on it, so I hate to delay you if possible. Possible delays in emails occur from either it just being the weekend or it being off hours, or perhaps your question is detailed in nature and requires me to actually sit down and get to the computer and type you a response that's more elaborate than just typing on a phone. So like I said, here's the information on how to reach me. My office is located in the Ops building at the Tyler Plaza. It's in Suite 200. If you ever need to come see me, you just go to Suite 200, ask and say you're here to meet with Dr. Romo, and they'll call me and I'll come get you. You can also reach me by phone. That is my office extension, so do know that I'm only able to answer it when I'm physically here, and I'm only physically here Monday and Tuesdays from 9 to 1. I am available by appointment throughout the rest of the week if you need to come in and those times happen to not work with you, or we can have a WebEx video conference meeting, or we can meet by phone as well. My email is listed there, and you should already have that from the Lancer Mail system. I am occasionally here other days of the week, but my formal hours to meet with students that are set aside are 9 to 1 on Monday and Tuesday, so do keep that in mind. Some things to briefly review in the syllabus that maybe we overlooked or were not sure of, or just to kind of let you know some things that are of the utmost importance from the syllabus, since it is such a large document, is to know that all discussion board assignments have 2 deadlines. Your original replies, so your actual post and answer to the prompt, is always due on Friday, and that's 11:59 p.m., and your reply posts are always due by Sunday. You always need to reply to at least 2 students, so do keep that in mind. This week, We do not have a discussion board, I believe, but in the weeks when we do, we'll have some formal instruction on what to expect from that. There has been some university changes in the guidelines on what we need to expect from students in that, so we'll go through that when we need to get to that. Additionally, always refer to the syllabus for week 8 deadlines. Make a note of that early on, perhaps this week, because they tend to vary significantly from the traditional deadlines in weeks 1 through 7. So do keep that in mind. Also know that late work and my late work policy is very simple and clear. It's only one sentence. Late work is not accepted under any circumstance. Plan ahead accordingly for any situations. Always predict that there's going to be an emergency, so get your assignments done early. If you know you may be traveling throughout the term and you're not quite sure if you're going to have access to reliable Wi-Fi and things of that nature, you should already know of those travel arrangements. So make efforts to get those assignments in early, and we'll make modifications to the deadlines for that, but they are usually never after the formal deadline for the course. So my advice to you is to work ahead with that. You would be doing that on your own, and I wouldn't advise you doing that without getting consent from me first. So please make sure you reach out to me if that's the case. Also know that weekly lecture and supplementary videos embedded into Blackboard are required to be viewed. It is expected that any assignment you complete, you've watched all videos within the weekly module as well as this video lecture. That's actually something that's embedded into how we develop the course and what we send to WASC. So the minutes, you're supposed to spend a certain amount of minutes each week in a course, is embedded into that. So those videos that you'll see in the week 1 module, they are not supplementary, they are required. I mean supplementary in the sense that they're just optional to watch. I'm assuming that you're watching all of those and that you have understood those and watch those to the extent that you can now complete the assignments. Same with the video lectures that I create for you each week. I go over each assignment in detailed form. Sometimes when you see the assignment in Blackboard, it's more of a shell of an assignment. It has the list of what you need to do to accomplish it. You get the information from how to accomplish those assignments by 1, reading the course text, 2, watching the videos posted in the weekly module, and 3, listening or watching the video lecture posted by me. So do keep that in mind. Some things to expect. As you look through the course in Blackboard, there are a couple of things that I want to point out that I think you need to be aware of. The first one is in the weekly agenda. It's created in 3 sections. You have a read, watch, complete section. So the first thing you should do is read. Then you should watch any listed TED Talks, and this screenshot here is just of a sample course, not our course. Then you'll watch any of the relevant videos listed there, and then you'll complete whatever it may be. Typically, discussion boards do have the date highlighted that you need to submit your original post and reply posts by. However, that's ultimately up to you to remember. So keep in mind, if we have a discussion board, your original post is always due by Friday night and your replies are due by Sunday. And that's just to be respectful of everybody's time and give them ample time to go on during the weekend to get involved with the participation aspect of the course. The second screen you'll see here says home and has a snapshot of what our home screen looks like. My video feed is blocking it a little, so I'll move that. And what I want you to know is all video lectures will be posted in the My Announcements section that is highlighted by the arrow pointing down. So each week it'll be posted in the My Announcements section. It will not be difficult for you to find because it will also be emailed to you. They are all in YouTube format, meaning you can view them on any device, mobile or desktop. You can listen to them as you drive to work or sit at your child's practice or whatever it may be. So it is definitely designed for mobile consumption because I understand what it's like to be a busy parent and going back to school. As I completed my master's and my PhD, I had both of my children in both of that time frame. So I definitely understand what it's like to be a busy working parent and trying to accomplish school at the same time. So anything I can do to help alleviate some of the requirements within our program, I definitely try to do that by making things easier and more mobile friendly for you to be able to complete some of the things on the go. As we go through that, a couple of other things that you should be aware of. Again, you'll see my video feed moving around for these first couple slides. Number 1, the My Grades section is important to look and you may be a veteran to Blackboard and to all this stuff, but I'm just going through this just in case there are students that are not, or highlighting some things maybe you weren't aware of and how you access your grades in the My Grades section. So as you go through My Grades, you will click the actual hyperlink of your text of the assignment. So the week 1, this is a shell Week 1 Lab, Introduction to Motor Development, you'll actually click the text of the assignment title. When that happens, it'll pop up and it'll show you all of your attempts. If you attempted it more than one time, your last attempt is always the one that's graded. That's the default one I go to. You do not need to notify me and say, hey, Dr. Romo, I submitted it 3 times, but I really want you to watch the one or grade the one that was last. I automatically grade the last submitted one. So do keep that in mind. Click the attempts you want to view. Then you'll go to your actual calculated grade and click on the grade. It's hyperlinked. Then you can pull up your submission. When you pull up your submission, if there's a rubric attached to it, you can click and view the rubric to see how it was graded according to the rubric. You can go down and see response feedback and click view instructor feedback here. That's where you'll view it. Sometimes it's automatically loaded for you. Sometimes you'll need to click it depending on how many characters and how big that text is. So that is where you access and see my feedback to you as well as what your grade was on your attempt for that particular assignment. So do keep that in mind. Sometimes that can be confusing. One thing I do want to keep in mind as we just move through and kind of pause to reflect is to know that all life with its culture and learning must be penetrated with Christian perspectives if Jesus Christ is to be Lord of all. It's important that we realize and take a second to pause and just know that human potential must be fully developed as possible if the stewardship of his or her life is to honor God. The Christian has a mandate in education, and I know the majority of the students in this course, or majority of you are liberal studies majors headed into hopefully elementary education or secondary education in some form or fashion, and that it's important to know that we do have a mandate in education, and that integration is ultimately concerned to see things whole from a Christian perspective and to penetrate thought with that perspective to thinking Christianly into other areas of our life, that being education, instruction, whatever that may be. Niebuhr, a noted Christian scholar, also tells us and explains that when we complete cultural work for any sake besides the glory of God, we are subject to his harsh judgment. Really, then, communication and culture intersect at this point of a cultural mandate. This is supported through 1 Thessalonians 1:3, where God tells us to remember without ceasing your work of faith, the labor of love and patience in the home of the Lord. And so it's really important to understand that the cultural mandate for Christianity and thinking Christianly comes through our communication. And that's one thing that maybe we don't fully realize or we take for granted from time to time. So as we move into the requirements for this week, please look at the week 1 agenda. This week we'll be reading chapter 1 in our text, the introduction, introducing theories. Here's a copy of what the physical text looks like itself. This is required to have this week. It's not an exception. It's not anything that's recommended. It's required text, so you should all have that already. Your guide for oral interpretation, you need to read that. That's attached in the week 1 module. It's very brief. It just gives you an idea of what to expect and is really a good guidebook as we move through to supplement with what our course text tells us. You'll also read Carrie's Views of Communication, which is embedded into the weekly module. It's towards the end of the Blackboard module, and we're going to highlight some of that stuff today as well. You're going to be watching 3 videos listed here in the agenda, as well as completing your weekly review number 1. So we're starting off with just some light material to help us whet our appetites and really getting into this idea of what oral interpretation is, which we'll get into in a second. Looking at weekly review number 1, it's important to know that this week you will write a 500 to 600 word comparison paper in APA format. For guidelines on APA format, if you are not familiar with that, utilize the OWL at Purdue, and as you utilize that, those are the guidelines in which I grade for APA quality and assurance and things of that nature. Every professor tends to have their preferences on certain things within APA, and so please refer to the OWL at Purdue as well as your APA manual and compare those two, because that's where I reference the grading from. I'm not too much of a stickler on that. That usually takes up only about 10% of the grade in any assignment, so keep that in mind. What you'll be doing in your comparison paper is you'll be comparing the transmission and ritualistic models of communication. If you're not sure what that is at this point, don't worry about that. The course reading and videos and this lecture will help you understand what that is, so you can write a paper and then you can expand that by getting some outside sources as well. So in your paper, you need to make sure you provide a personal definition for communication and oral interpretation. Those are 2 separate things. I want you to define what communication is to you after going through the course readings and everything, and then what oral interpretation is, which you'll know by the end of completing all of your reading and video watching. Then I want you to define transmission and ritualistic models of communication, which again, you'll be able to complete after all of the readings. Compare and contrast those both models and explain how each model is useful in oral interpretation and within the communication studies field as a whole. Format it using full APA requirements. That means a cover page, reference page, all the shebangs, headers, all that. And with that, include the course text as well as at least 2 outside sources. As an idea of measurement, it's a good thing. It's a good thing to remember and to make note of early on in the semester that 2 outside sources are required on every assignment. I'm looking to see what you've done to embed something outside of the course text. So that's an outside source. This is an inside source. I'm assuming you're going to be citing your course text. I want 2 things aside from that. That's really simple to accomplish. One could be a video you watch that's embedded into Blackboard, or it could be the oral interpretation guide, or it could be this lecture and you cite it as Romo 2017, and then in your references you cite the actual lecture as you would in a video for an APA format. So that I provide you with 2 outside sources every week. You can go beyond that, that's fine, but just my point is don't stress about that, but I want to see that you're looking and you're considering options aside from our physical textbook. There is a rubric embedded for this assignment in Blackboard, so feel free to refer to that as you see fit. And if you have any questions, do not hesitate to contact me early on. This is not due this week, but I want to start talking about it now. One of the major assignments, there's a couple of them, which we'll talk about as they occur throughout the semester, that you'll be completing is an oral interpretation performance project. You will be selecting a text and performing an oral interpretation of that text once we get through understanding what oral interpretations are. And so it's not until about week 6 or so, and we have a number of assignments that are embedded to lead up to this, so you'll be well prepared. Don't worry about that. Just start thinking about this. The videos you're watching this week are oral interpretations. This week is designed for you to start to understand what oral interpretation is and what a performance consists of. So in this, you will, in this performance, it will be recorded and submitted either via Vimeo or YouTube. You complete an assignment on topic selection, rationale, outlines, and scripts leading up to the performance, and you'll submit this assignment to a discussion board and provide at least 2 replies to other students in the courses. I want you to be aware of this early on in the semester. I don't want this to be a surprise to you, so I'm just letting you know about it now. Nothing to worry about specifically at this point, but just to be thinking you're going to be leading up to doing something as this. And for those of you in the course that are liberal studies majors, since I know that the majority of you are, aside from some of our comm studies, performance and oral interpretation is really designed to get you out there in front of an audience and be prepared to present things in a number of different ways and performance features as well as public speaking. So that's where we're really coming from. I want to give a brief overview of communication studies, explaining what communication studies is. This is just a review for some of you that already know that, or for some of you this is new to you. I want to make sure you understand this before we move into what oral interpretation is. So as we get into this, it's important to know that communication is loosely defined as a process by which individuals create and share meaning through rituals to maintain and sustain and manage that meaning. So it's really important to know that communication is designed as a process by which we're creating and sharing meaning through rituals and trying to maintain and sustain and manage that meaning. There are really 2 perspectives of communication that influence a lot of communication theory, and we'll be going through some of those this semester in our performance theories, which is the transmission and ritualistic views of communication. That's why our assignment's tied to that this week, so you can fully understand what communication study is as we move into oral interpretations and such. So it's important to know that in these 2 views of communication, specifically, the transmission view of communication really views communication taking place on 2 fixed points. So you'll see here in the graphic below the text that it has a source and a receiver. The message bounces back and forth from the source and from the receiver at all points. So from a transmission perspective, or sometimes it's often referred to as a linear perspective, communication takes place between 2 fixed points with the sender and receiver on a line. So this linear perspective really considers that the transmission process of communication is about the process of communicating something, what it takes to get the communication out there, and not the actual communication. So we have a source, we have a receiver, we have something we want to say, we send the message that way. How do we prepare the message to go to the receiver? How do we get a message back from the receiver? You look at the communication and how it takes place and the functionality of getting communication from one place to another, more so than what the actual communication is. This is further described in the Shannon-Weaver model of communication, where communication is defined as being linear and focused on the transmission. We have a point where we have a source, we encode a message and develop a message, send the message out, it's decoded by a receiver and internalized by a receiver, and then sent back again the other way, and back and forth process of that. It's very important to see how that works. So whenever you think of transmission model of communication, understand that it has to do with viewing communication taking place from a source to a message, back and forth, like playing catch, and the source and the receiver are playing catch with the message, like playing baseball. So ritualistic view of communication is really not about the process of what it takes to actually communicate. It's more about and it's not a part of the impartation of messages between a sender and a receiver, but what it's about is creating shared meaning with one another through a communication experience. It also views communication as an experience with another and completed as part of a ritual. So we view communication as a ritual, something that we partake in according to certain cultural standards and norms and societal norms that help us understand how to send the message, yes, but we focus more on about what the communication is, what the message is, what we're saying, rather than anything outside of that. Peters describes true communication as an inner experience. He's a noted communication scholar and theologian that views all communication, or all true communication, as an inner experience where you are communing with one another, and it's part of a ritual where you really get together and you get to know one another, and communication is about this ritual and experience, more so than just sending a message. Anybody can send a message, but when we want to commune, the root of communication is communes. When we want to get together and communicate and be a part of each other in community, we're focusing more on that experience that happens with communication rather than just sending the message back and forth. Jamie Smith also tells us that humans are homoliturgical in nature. They're designed to worship and commune with one another, and also with God. And communication, also noted communication historian, tells us that communication takes place within the community and shapes the culture of a community. So ritualistic view, like I said, it focuses on how communication impacts, influences, and creates an experience among each other within cultures and societal ideas. So now that we've understood, or at least have an idea of what those two views of communication are, it's important to understand what is oral interpretation. As we look at oral interpretation is something that happens within the area of communication studies. It's not public speaking, it's not debate, it's not acting. Oral interpretation involves the performing of literature allowed to communicate meaning to an audience. So we're utilizing a ritualistic perspective to perform some piece of literature, and what I mean by literature is any type of book, speech, portion of a film, whatever it may be, to communicate that to an audience, to allow them to convey some type of meaning to the audience. We're communicating something more than what we're saying, but we're doing this in a performance-based setting. An interpreter, so the person performing the piece, analyzes the literature and uses their voice to communicate the results of the analysis. So if you were to take something, we'll say something that we're all pretty much have some awareness of, like the I Have a Dream speech by Martin Luther King, and you decide you want to analyze that speech, look at what that speech is saying to us, not directly, but maybe indirectly saying to us, so what he was trying to indirectly communicate to us in that speech. After you've analyzed that, it's your turn to perform his speech in your way that you feel from what you found maybe some of those hidden messages are within the speech. So the interpreter is the connection between the literature and the audience. You're performing someone else's work in a way to show them what you found from what you read in that work or watched their performance and what you think it is. And so that's what oral interpretation is. As we look at this a little more deeply, it's important to know, like I said, that oral interpretation is not public speaking or acting. And some of the differences between those is that you're not the author. You're performing someone else's work. So you're not sharing your own personal thoughts and feelings as you would in a public speaking forum. You're sharing their thoughts and feelings from their piece, their work, their written work, or their video, or the script, or their lyrics to their song, and performing it as how you interpret that piece of work to be. So that's your personal flair on it, is that you're performing it based off of what you think that work speaks to you and what you think that work means from when you read it and what you get out of it. So 2, you perform the author's work by direct reading. As an interpreter, you bring to life those exact words of another person. As you interpret a piece of literature, you're not trying to create a message to persuade or inform your listeners like you would in a public speaking setting. Instead, you're trying to help the listeners see images that you are creating from the way that you perform this. Your goal is to share meaning and communicate meaning from what you interpret, and to create a performance-based environment for people to understand and see what it is. We're going to watch a lot of these videos this term, so you'll get a good idea of how people do this. And you remain yourself during the performance at all. When you are acting, you take on the role of a character in a play, but when you interpret, you use your voice and you project the reading, but you help. The goal is to share the meaning of the literature as you interpret the literature and what you interpret it to be. So I know that's a lot, but we're going to watch some videos on oral interpretation this week and in the coming weeks. And we also have our guide to oral interpretation we're reading this week, should help you to understand really what that is. Recapping the agenda, we're reading chapter 1. We're reading the guide for oral interpretation, and we're reading the embedded article on Carrie's views of communication within the week 1 module. You're also watching 2 oral interpretation performances and also a video on what communication models are to kind of really heighten that awareness. You're completing weekly review number 1, which asks you to really get in there and understand what the transmission and ritualistic view of communication is. I think you'll see, and you'll start to see, we use the ritualistic view of communication a lot in this course. That's one of the primary views that we utilize, so it's really important that we start to understand that. If you have any questions, please let me know. I pray that you all have a blessed week, and I look forward to interacting with you online. God bless.